Okay, welcome back to the Jiu-Jitsu Mindset. My name is Pete Deley. Professor Lucas Hubo is out doing the good work that he does, teaching and being a new parent. So we'll miss him today, but we all sent him our love and good thoughts. As a new parent, many of us were exhausted in those early days, and so I'm sure he's drinking his submission coffee, and I'd encourage you to get your subscription to submission coffee as well at the jujitsumindset.com. We, as a athlete that can only be considered an older athlete at on the doorstep of 55, if you're an older athlete, you have gone through your ups and downs in terms of your body behaving, and then sadly for many of us, you have an injury along the way, and often more than one. So you seek help and guidance out there, and today I'm fortunate enough to talk to somebody who has a love of jujitsu and is a physical therapist, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. So, Dr. Diana Wang, thank you for spending some time with us. I'm really glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Pete. I'm really appreciative for the reach out and yeah, excited for our convo.
So, I'm curious because to become, a doctor of anything requires an extraordinary amount of commitment and often passion to get you from the start to the end because it's too hard if it's not important. And so, maybe we could start with um, the passion that brought you from being a student, not a medical student, to becoming a doctor, and then having come to jujitsu as well. In those two journeys, is there anything in common between studying medicine and becoming a healer and studying jujitsu? Because those maybe they're entirely different parts of who you are that is, being developed, or maybe there's some overlap. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, what's interesting is I always feel like jujitsu has an overlap to everything in life. So that's like a
Mm.
common conversation that I think about in general of just all the characteristics that you have in terms of going through the journey of jujitsu can be very applicable to a lot of other parts. But going back to the beginning of your the first part of your question is yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is when I was in high school, I kinda knew that I wanted to be a physical therapist. I kinda wanted to go into something sports medicine related, so it
Mhm.
wasn't super clear right off the bat, but I was lucky enough that one of my high school, like, professors slash, the athletic trainer at our school, he decided he was gonna start, like, an intro to sports med class, and I
Nice.
was one of the students in his first ever, like, beta testing class,
Nice.
and, me and a couple of our friends were like, "Oh, this sounds fun, a little bit of medicine, a little bit of sports, like, what could be better than that?" Because I already knew that I wanted to go into some sort of rehab, so took the class, and then it really just stirred up my interest in pursuing something along that path, but at the same time, I was like, "I don't know if I want to commit all the time to go to, medical school in general just because it is so long and it is very expensive," right? So I wanted to take a different path where it was more hands-on with working with athletes and being able to be in the trenches with them and be able to really have a very hands-on approach to their rehab program, and so I started looking into the different paths. I ended up going to college for, like, sports med
Mhm.
and, detoured a little bit into athletic training, which is just like a tangent off of that, and I was able to work with some Division I athletes for a couple years when I was in college, which was super, super cool. Um, but then after that, I still felt like I was more interested in the rehab side of things, so I decided I wanna go into PT school, and, I ended up going to PT school at the same undergrad that I was at and graduated in a couple years. I mean, it was an accelerated program, so it was super intensive, we never had breaks. We were, like, on campus all year long. But after that, I graduated and started working in, like, a traditional PT setting, and then realized, um, that I wanted to try something different for in terms of, like, my own fitness
Right.
journey. Like,
Mhm.
at that time, I was just going to the gym, lifting weights, and in college, we didn't really have that much time, or PT school, we didn't have that much time, so never really got to explore that. So, once I started working as a physical therapist, I realized I kind of want something different. I kind of want something new. So I got really lucky, and there was a jiu-jitsu school, or like a MMA gym, like not too far from my work. And then I ended up going to a class. I started in kickboxing, which I feel like a lot of people do. And then I saw on a mat next to us that people were just like rolling around in these like gis. At that
Right.
time, I didn't know what they were called. I was like, "What is that?" But jumped into one of the classes, and it immediately was one of those things which I feel like a lot of people say was just like, "Whoa, this is really different. This is really cool," and I really feel like a beginner. So
Yeah.
that was one of my favorite parts. And then from there, I've just been have moved a couple times in California, but eventually figured out that the setting that I was in a traditional PT setting was not my objective.
Hmm.
And then decided that I was going to take the risk of merging jujitsu and physical therapy. So then that's where the journey of open mat physio started. That's where we were able to kind of like grow a bit of a social media following. And then now having it as like my full-time work, and I can train jujitsu as much as I want. It's like a part of my life in so many ways. If anything, it's like such a big part of my life, has been such a blessing.
So having like a really wide field of vision for as it relates to athletes and how different types of athletes might come to you in need of help. I'm curious, is there anything particular about when you're rehabbing a jiu-jitsu athlete compared to other athletes? Does it feel, well, the athletic mindset is the athletic mindset and it's similar, or do they carry any I don't know if unique is, fair, but let's just use the word like unique dispositions or ways of thinking about like their body that's not working as it should at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. And it's actually interesting because Open Mat Physio, we only work with jiu-jitsu athletes. I don't work with any other athletes anymore. I used to,
Right.
but right now it's like I've decided if I'm gonna go all in, I'm gonna go all in. I
Okay.
want to learn everything about the community. I'm a part of the community. I want to serve the community in any way that I possibly can. And that requires me to be all in. So when I used to work with different athletes, I have a ton of colleagues who work in all different sports as well. So we have conversations like this all the time. But
Right.
I think what's really, really unique about jiu-jitsu athletes is there is I'll say hint of like obsession that you don't really see in other sports.
Okay.
Like, for example, you have people who do basketball like as a hobbyist on the weekends and stuff. But
Right.
then in jiu-jitsu, you can have a hobbyist, but they're like super obsessed with developing skills. They're super obsessed with the sport. They always want to be training. They have a family, they have a job, they have other responsibilities. But there's like a inherent like deep passion and love for jiu-jitsu, which is such a unique part of the community. And I think if anything, it helps the rehab process because there is a internal motivation to want to get back to training
Right.
that I don't really have to force like before when I was working in a like a clinic setting, or when I used to work with other types of sports hobbyists. There was a bit of like, I could do it if I wanted to, but I don't really care. I could find something else to do. But
Right.
one of the things we always say, which is really interesting, is that a lot of jujitsu athletes will go into like actual physician doctor offices that where they don't really know what jujitsu is. They
Yeah.
almost think it's taekwondo or like
Sure. Yeah.
karate or something, and they're like, yeah, just find a like the best advice is just to find another hobby. And then we always say our job is to never tell you to find another hobby or to
Right.
quit jujitsu. Our job is to get you back to training.
Yeah.
So I think that is probably the most unique characteristic of jujitsu athletes in my experience of working with them.
Yeah, I mean that's terrific. When I listen to you talk, even for your own coming to jiu-jitsu, it's almost accidental. You didn't wasn't in your field of vision for I want to go do this. It almost comes to you, right? Presents itself, and then it's a love at first sight type of story, is what it sounds like. And I think on some level, I think that happens to many of us in the jiu-jitsu community. I was 50 when I found it, and I have had physicians since for the last 25 years say, you know what, Pete, maybe you should swim. Like like why don't you stop doing the things that I like to do? And instead, they always want to counsel me out of that. It was CrossFit, and now it's Jiu-Jitsu, and you know, and then I'm probably a valuable patient because I need all these. Probably should replace 4 of my major joints if the doctors would have their way about me. But that I think it occupies a disproportionate amount of our brains in a way that I had certain athletic successes earlier in my life, and when I came to jiu-jitsu, I found it really confounding, and I still find it confounding. Like my brain and body connecting those things are hard for me as a jiu-jitsu athlete. I'm only 5 years into my training, so I mean, in the jiu-jitsu timeline, that's probably short. So it seems like you would see that primarily as an advantage that you have a lot of compliance among your patients. Do you find that they're rushing to get back maybe before they should? Is that possible among us?
Always, 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 always. So I always say that PT, a big part of our job is to manage personalities.
Yeah,
So managing some people are very patient because let's say they don't have a goal that is in the near future. Their goal is more of like, I want to get back to training and I want to have longevity, which is a big
yeah,
part of our message is longevity should be our main goal. If you want to train jiu-jitsu for a long time, there are strategies to longevity. And I think if you understand the intention behind it, then it makes it a little bit more tangible
yeah,
versus like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to train jiu-jitsu for a long time. But there are also the other camp where there's people that are like, I have a competition in 3 weeks and I popped my knee and I need to get to the competition.
right.
So my job is to be able to figure out, okay, what's realistic and what's not realistic in
Sure.
terms of what can we do. If someone is very like gives me a lot of pushback on, I have to do this, then there's conversations that we'll have in terms of, all right, let's do as much as we can. We'll deal with the consequences later because we're all adults. People make decisions and people
Right,
are going
right.
to do what they're going to do.
Yeah,
I can tell you not to do something and you can be like, screw you, I'm going to go do it,
yeah,
which
yeah.
has happened before early in my career. But I think there is a bit of what I guess would deem more as like trust that needs to be
Yeah,
there of
yeah,
trusting that I'm not going to hold you back longer than I feel like you need to be held back. So we have a lot of in-depth conversations with our clients in the beginning of saying, hey, look, this is the reality of what's going on. We're our team, we're not going to be like babying you. We
right, right.
want you to
Yeah,
get back to
yeah,
training.
yeah,
Our goal
sure.
is to get you back to training. I'm not gonna hold you back if I don't feel like I have to. However, we have to understand that there's tissue structures that need to be healed. And we can't rush this process,
Yeah,
right? It's like if you rush the process, you're gonna run into a lot more obstacles, adversity along the way because we're not respecting the tissue healing timeline. But if you respect it, give the body what it needs, it'll give you what you want. So that's a big conversation we have with a lot of our clients. And then we kind of like bring them back down from like this almost like in the clouds type of feeling of, oh my God, I need to get back immediately to, okay, I just need to trust the process. I need to learn about my body. And I have to have a different perspective on what we're doing and why we're doing it. So there
yeah.
is that back and forth of some people have the innate motivation, but sometimes it's a little bit too much and they want to rush the process. So it just depends on the person that we have a different type of conversation.
It's so hard because it requires a person to have an imagination about their future body. I would say until I was probably 45, I ignored everybody's advice about healing from any given injury. And if you were to say to my 45 and younger self, you will be much more mobile and agile if you listen to me. And I could imagine what I'm like now, where my shoulders, this is what it means for me to put my hands up and all the different things that are wrong with me. I lack the imagination to connect, hey, let's go slow now and it will be better for you. And instead, I went fast. So I was one of those terrible patients that was impatient. And then anyway, so I can appreciate how uh, you probably need a degree in psychology and all of those skills in addition to your knowledge of the physical body to work with us. I just out of curiosity, I mean, you have spent all of this energy and and have all this commitment in this particular direction. What's the alternative timeline for you? If you were not, if you had not gone down this road, where would you, do you have in your imagination where you might have poured yourself into, if not, uh, being a physical therapist and ultimately, a jujitsu physical therapist?
It's funny that you asked this question because I actually had a conversation with one of my like really close friends from college over the weekend when we were driving back from San Luis Obispo.
Right?
And I think generally, I probably my personality, I am a very like introspective, like I love learning about people and how our minds work, which I think is a bit of an advantage when it comes to navigating challenging interactions, especially in rehab, right? Like kind of
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
mentioned, there's a big psychology piece to
sure.
so much of what we do. And there's such a big like meeting people where they are piece that if you don't know how to navigate like the ebbs and flows of that, it makes it so um like not a fun experience. Like people want to be able to kind of see where your mind's at, see your intentions, understand your actual that you actually care about them, and it
Right.
helps a lot.
Yes, yes, for
So
sure.
I think if I weren't going like if PT was not a path,
Yes.
I think what I would probably have leaned into was either academia, so like teaching of some sort, because I
Right.
love to learn and I love to share knowledge, or something in psychology.
Okay.
Um, those two paths are just make sense in terms of my interests. So I think that would be the other options.
Yeah. That, well, as you have found this incredible intersection of your professional life, your personal interests, all the passions seem to be pointing in a particular direction, which is fortunate. Most people can't quite figure out how to, how to do that. What, when you see people around you developing their jujitsu and your own development of jujitsu, I'm curious about your opinion of competition. Like, what role does competition play in the development of a person's relationship to the art? Because I think some people feel like it's for everybody. Some people feel like everybody should take a crack at it once, and then others are like, you can you can fully experience it, the art and the martial art of it as well without the jiu-jitsu competition experience. And where do you come down on that?
That's a really great question. About like late last year, maybe in the fall, I was really, you know, grappling, no pun intended, with this
Yeah.
specific topic because there were some influences in my life that were saying you should compete at every belt level. You should at
Yes,
least
yes.
try to do this and all that. And I did a lot of reflection on it in terms of just what competition means to people and what competition what role it plays. I
Yeah.
think for myself, just personally, I've always been like in competition since I was young. Like I played a lot of sports when I was little. I when I was in high school, I played like competitive basketball for a while. I almost walked on to like a team when I was in college. So
Nice.
there was a lot of years of competitive nature and putting myself in situations and all that where I feel like as I gotten older and I'm looking at jujitsu, I've had to evaluate what my goal is in
Yeah.
jujitsu and
Right, right.
also the role of jujitsu in my life. And I think the conclusion that I came to is jujitsu is something that supplements the version of myself that I want to be, which is, continuing to learn, building skills, building community, and all these things. And personally, I don't see competition as being a big role in that just because I don't really have the intentions of wanting to commit to a fight camp and deal
Yeah,
with
yeah.
all the nonsense that comes with competition and sometimes all the struggles that come with that. Although I have a lot of teammates that compete.
Right,
So if anything, my role is just to prepare my teammates for competition by
right.
giving them good roles, good reactions, taking care of them, and allowing them to work their game. But I do think in general, if people are not sure of whether competition is good for them, like I've done one jiu-jitsu competition.
Okay,
Let's
okay.
just say that when I was a
All
white
right, yeah,
belt
at the beginning, yeah.
and when I was a white belt and like 5 months into my training. And I did it and it was great, but I was like, I don't know if this is for me,
Right.
because it's like after that, I mean, granted, I was a white belt, so my skills were probably pretty terrible, but I was so sore for like a week. Some of my old injuries flared up.
Sure.
It was not the best experience afterwards, and I think now that I've gotten a little bit deeper into my jujitsu journey, I'm more of like, I don't really feel like it serves a part of me that I really want to
Oh, okay.
grow.
Yeah,
There's
interesting. Yeah, you don't
yeah, there's
water the seeds of that part of you, I guess,
yeah,
right?
like
Yeah.
I rather jujitsu be something because okay, here's another like little backstory is like I'm a fairly competitive person in general.
Right.
When I was in played basketball, I was there was versions of myself that came out that I was like, as I got older, I was like, let's just not poke the bear. So nowadays it's more of if I want to enjoy this thing, I
Right,
have
right.
to have specific boundaries around my mindset, around the perspective that I put on it. So I find that dabbling into competition, dabbling into prep for that competition, I wasn't having a lot of fun.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
now when I'm like focused just on fun, hanging out with my friends,
Yeah, yeah.
like getting hard rolls in, but still enjoying it, I just have like my journey in the last year has just been so much better and so
Yeah.
much more fruitful versus focusing like I need to win, I need to be
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
competition. But at the same time, I understand the other side, which is if you want to challenge yourself in a different way, you want to really test yourself with against other people, then sure, it just like I fully believe that in anything, it just comes down to intention.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what is
yeah.
your intention,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and for me, it's an interesting experience because I I've competed at each of my belts uh and I but at this point in my life, I'm completely divorced from the outcome. And because I don't, the victory for me is to be in to participate, right, more than it is and I totally respect and understand, like, hey, if you're going to compete, you're here to win, and so on and so forth. I just that part of me has concluded. I just I like to participate. I like the feeling of anxiety that comes along with the experience. I like the intention of trying to master myself and all the rest of it. But I no longer care, sort of, whether I or win or lose, which reduces surely my intensity. But as it relates to longevity, I would like to compete here until basically I die. So. I always like to hear your perspective. And as somebody who has such a pleasant disposition, Dr. Diana, like poking the bear and see, like it's interesting to me that you felt, oh, in these circumstances, I wasn't bringing out the part of me that, um, that I want to become become more of. When you have probably almost a uniquely intimate relationship with the community, I would imagine, because you're talking and dealing with things that, you know, uh, when you're injured or hurt, you have a different relationship to your body and the world, as you're trying to work your way through it. So you probably have a lot of stories of how you've observed jujitsu impacting other people. And I just would ask you to maybe tell one of, what have you seen, the power of jujitsu in other people's lives? Like what have you seen out there that you would share
I
with us?
Yeah, yeah. Jujitsu is a very impactful journey in so many ways. I think one of the biggest things for sure that I see across the board is when people are able to utilize jujitsu as like their third space, because this is something that we
Yeah.
talk about a lot in with like training partners and stuff is unless you are in the world of jujitsu, you don't understand why it's so important to people. And one of the reasons why I believe that jujitsu makes such a big impact on people is as we become adults, it's really challenging to find something where you feel like you're making meaningful progress.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
as we
yeah,
become
nice.
adults, a lot of times we start to maybe live our lives and then maybe have developed your own family and all these things, but it's hard to find a hobby or a sport that allows you to feel like you're improving little by little and has tangible tangible goals that you can meet, like with
Right, right.
belts and all that, which I think, there's like that big conversation around like, do belts matter and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I think for some people it does. And I don't think it needs to be one way or the other. I think there's a gray area in everything that we need to talk about. But it's very helpful as we age to
Mhm.
have something where we want to work towards. So I think with jujitsu, being able to have that measuring stick, it makes a really big difference in people's lives. And it's no surprise nowadays that, making adult friendships is also really challenging for a lot of people. So jujitsu allows for that space. And if anything, I think it's like a slow burn of how jujitsu can really impact anyone's life. But having that one objective or multiple objectives of where you want to start to move towards, but also having the social circle, the community that can play such a big role in your day-to-day joy, your day-to-day fulfillment, and plays a really big role in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's, in my opinion, probably the biggest impact that I've seen
Yeah.
in
Do you
a
have
lot of
any
jujitsu.
story of a person though? You got anybody, you don't have to name the name, but just like, oh, you saw this and then
Yeah.
through, because I agree with you in all those themes. I mean, that particularly, I love to watch the children, and particularly the girls, because I feel like there are things going on there that jujitsu has unique power among the kids, but the parents are bringing them. They're not, they may be picking it, but I think in a lot of instances, some parent is bringing a child. But an adult comes and decides, okay, I'm going to do this, and I don't know. There's just been so many stories we've told on here of like, okay, you know what, there was this person, and then they
Yeah.
came to us.
I can't help but keep thinking about, like, all my clients who have gotten into places where they have a community and they're able to train jujitsu and they've been really deep in their own journey, but then suffered an injury and was told by multiple, healthcare providers that they're probably not gonna come back, and they were almost in um, like a depressive state because
Sure.
they felt like their whole world was crumbling.
Yeah.
We've had multiple moments where people come to us almost like desperate for help because they're like, this is my last hope. If I don't get help, I don't know what I would do. And it's our job to be able to be like, okay, well, let's break everything down. Let's see if we can help you get back and set proper expectations of how long it's going to take and then give them tangible goals little by little. And then
Sure.
watching our clients be able to slowly work through their pain, their chronic pain, being able to feel a little bit more confident about themselves and start to see this like different light that comes
Yeah.
out of them after a couple months and being able to go back to training has been the most rewarding part. And also, it's interesting because most of them will come back after they're done and just let us know, hey, in the beginning when I first met you, I actually was in a terrible mindset and I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
know how to get out of it. And so after we've stopped working together, maybe they were able to go back to training, enter their third space back again and
Yeah.
feel like they have that community and then they got promoted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like those stories are my favorite stories and it's happened multiple times, and, it's not that we had a direct effect on their promotion, but we had at least an effect on being able to help get them back to that space that was so important to them
Yeah.
that they didn't know if they were able to get back to at one point in their lives.
Yeah. We I love how our schools do our belt promotion ceremonies. Everybody has a chance to, as many schools do, a chance to stand up and say kind of what it means to them and so on and so forth. One of my favorite little talks was of a dad who got up and says, listen, this belt really is a uh, reminder of how much time I've spent with my son on the mats because we come and all the rest of it. And in many ways, I've adopted that as what does it mean? That because my skills are what they are. I incrementally progress. That's not a straight line for me. I'm always trying to do better, but I have a very patient kind of trajectory. So whether or not I meet anybody's expectations or somebody, should I be as good as I am or not? But I do know that every year, every couple of years as things change, color in terms of belts, it means that's how much time I've got a chance to spend with these people, and they're special to me. And the third space is a very nice, metaphor. Obviously, I think Starbucks is who taught me that phrase. It's not work, it's not home, but it's someplace else to be, and we all kind of need that. Well, I'm guessing, people are going to want to know where to find you. So, like, what tell us the places if they go to look for you, they can come and find you.
Yeah, everywhere on the interwebs at Open Mat Physio. So if you type in Open Mat Physio, you'll be able to find us on Instagram, our website, and yeah, all our information there.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Diana, I really appreciate you spending the time with us, and maybe you'll come back again and we can have some more conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pete.